Hello, my name is John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George. Prince George is the capital of northern BC, and it's a beautiful day today. In the back you can see nice sunny day. It's in the winter a little bit, but still a very, very nice day. Today is a special day because I have a special guest. It is Dr. Peter Legge, and Peter has an amazing resume, amazing guest. Peter, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John. It's an honor to be part of your show and to see a little bit of Prince George behind you. And I'm delighted to be here. I love the name of your show, On the Brink.
Exactly. Yeah, it was a bit of a natural, right? It came to mind and saying, well, that's what it should be, you know. So, Peter, you have, and we have been friends for a long time. We have known each other for a long time, but you have an amazing amount of credentials. And what comes to mind in particular is you have I see on your sweater you have a little pin, and if I'm correct, that is the Order of British Columbia.
That is correct, sir.
Very distinct and very, very highly recognized, and congratulations. And I think you got that quite a number of years ago.
I did. It was an honor to get it. And I hadn't realized at the time, but apparently whoever nominated me for 10 consecutive years. I had no idea before they even said yes.
Oh my goodness.
It's a difficult award to get.
Right.
Not that you go after it, but
Yeah.
I was honored to get it.
Yes, and as you know, I had the same honor. I believe it was in 2019 that I got also the Order of BC. I'm not exactly sure who got my name in and how long they tried, but again, I'm very honored as well to have it. BC means a lot to both of us, an amazing province, to say the least. The other thing about you that I find interesting, you had and have multiple honorary doctorates of technology for one, that is BCIT, and I believe you have another one from SFU, if I'm correct.
Yes.
And is that an honorary doctorate of laws, or what is it?
Yes, that's an honorary doctorate of laws.
And then the other thing... Yeah, go ahead, Peter.
And there's one more from Simon Fraser University.
Yeah. So, and then the other part and the reason that I'm kind of laying it out there for our guest is to make sure that I recognize your credentials, because all of them, make you unique in a way and as being recognized by so many others, is the other part that is close to my heart, because I used to be a Toastmaster, still am in a way, for at least 10 years that I worked with Toastmasters to improve my communication skills and all the things around it. To me, that has changed my life for all intents and purposes. To become a better communicator, a better listener in a lot of ways, and a lot of other things that are directly related to Toastmasters. Toastmasters, worldwide organization, very firmly established and utilized by many, many people around the world. And what they do is they recognize people that are not necessarily directly Toastmasters, but are standing out as speakers or communicators in some form or fashion. And they get recognized in getting the Golden Gavel Award, which is very, very unique, happens to very, very few people. You were one of them that received that honor as well.
Yes, I was very privileged when Toastmasters decided that they were going to honor me with that. They've been a big part of my life in helping me grow my speaking ability, and getting that award, as you know, is the highest highest achievement you can do in Toastmasters.
Correct.
And so it's been a privilege to do that, and I'm honored to accept that on their behalf for sure.
Yeah. And then the other part that you do is that, you are a professional speaker that has spoken or get engaged, professional speaker, throughout the world in different venues. And for quite a number of years, you used to do 50, 60 different speeches in all kinds of different locations. Tell us a little bit about that. How do you get into that? And how do you get recognized? And then how do they go about bringing you into different venues? And how do you adapt to all the different topics and expectations that they have?
Well, in the last couple of years, obviously, with the let's call it this pandemic that we're kind of getting out of,
Right.
there haven't been a lot of big meetings, big conventions, and what have you, where I would get to speak at these places. So it's been kind of a dark time. It is coming back, which is good. And speaking to me, I love speaking. I love the ability to get up and share some of my thoughts and dreams and visions, and hopefully motivating you or the audience or the group that have invited me. But we're just finishing a book that I'm doing, and one of the chapters was the very first speech I gave was at Vincent Massey Junior High School, which is in New Westminster, still there today, and I was emceeing the grade 9 assembly, and I was only in grade 9 myself, moved to high school, and I thought that was my very first speaking engagement, and I thought, well, I kind of like this.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something I could do. I had no idea what it was going to take to do that, but that's where it started. And
How old were you then, Peter?
well, I guess it was grade 9 to 10.
Yeah.
So how old would I have been? 16, 17, something like
Yeah.
that. 16.
Quite young.
Yeah. And it's something I had no idea that I'd be so intimidated to do.
Yeah.
But they asked me to do that on behalf of the graduating kids, and Vincent Massey Auditorium is still there today.
Right.
And so I did what I had to do, and I thought, well, I like this. I wonder if I could make a career out of this. Little did I know I would, but that's where it started for me. In New Westminster.
Yeah, and as you know, and as I know, that for most people, there is a great fear of public speaking. That included me, till I joined Toastmasters when I was 2090, about 50 years old, before I went to Toastmasters. And somebody, an ex-sister-in-law actually, kind of dragged me down to Toastmasters. She says, you have to go and just kind of listen. And I said, no, I don't really want to go there, because they maybe asked me questions to, hey, John, tell us a little bit about you. I didn't want to do that because I had this fear, of standing up and speaking out to a group of people. And so she convinced me to go. And then during the meeting, somebody said, hey, John, tell us a little bit about who you are. And I said, oh my God. And I did. And then she asked me to go again the following week. I said, no, I'm not doing that again. And then I went anyway. And then from there, and gradually over time, I've met a lot of people that are new to Toastmasters. I've never met somebody as reluctant as I was. But as I gradually improved my confidence and became better at it, and then after 10 years or during that period, there are different levels of Toastmastering. I became a distinguished Toastmaster, which is the highest level in Toastmasters, and changed my life. And I did the same as you experienced in grade 9. I do quite a bit of public speaking, and I love it as a hobby, and also do it and more so as a professional, and it is still one of my goals to become a presenter as you became in your professional life, and then so that's kind of what I'm looking forward to. And you have been an example for me in terms of the books that you write, and I'm doing some of that, but you've written so far, I think, 23. The one that you just were referring to, is that number 24?
No, it's called Secrets of the Masters. That was 23.
23. And when is that coming out, Peter?
It's out now.
It's out now.
I interviewed 20 people,
Yeah.
and different times, different locations, and once we transcribed them all, I thought, this could make a really good book.
Yeah.
People reading about the Jimmy Pattersons of this world and the Rick Hansons of this world, and
Joe Siegels.
Joe Siegels, and Jimmy Patterson and what have you.
Yeah.
And that's how that book came. Almost by accident, it came. I didn't start out to be a book. It started out just to be interviews.
But
So it's
but you are a natural writer, right? So you kind of fell into that. How old were you, or when did you write your first book?
I would say 30 years ago.
Yeah. And what was the title of your first book?
It was called How to Soar with the Eagles.
Interesting.
Yeah, How to Soar with the Eagles. We couldn't think of a name of the book.
Yeah.
So we thought, well, what do I want to do? I want to soar with the eagles. Doesn't everybody want to soar with the eagles, go beyond their capacities and do something that they've never done before? And so that's how we came up with the name, How to Soar with the Eagles.
Yeah. And
it's not really about eagles.
No.
But it's about how you can be an eagle in your own career, in your own city, in your own province, in your own country.
Yeah. Of all the opportunities and the potential there is, right?
Yeah.
And then what I found is, I'm now working on book number 3 that's coming out in July. Already reserved printing time for book number 4. I won't be catching up to you, I know that. But I found that it takes some effort to understand the whole process of writing. But not only writing, but there is so much more involved in writing. It means what does it look like? Where should it be printed? How should it be managed? The whole process of bringing it to market is quite involving and quite unique.
Yes, yes. I think one of the things that helped us over the years, we're as you know, in the magazine publishing industry, and so what we do as a living day to day, Monday to Friday, is kind of related. We don't do magazines, we do publications.
Right.
And magazines, pardon me, and we don't do books. And out of that, a book really is a magazine, but it has a different approach, different size, different content, and so forth. And so we found it relatively easy to publish a book, to write a book and publish a book and get it distributed, because we had those contacts. So those really helped.
Yeah.
But when you give somebody a book and you sign it to John and with best wishes or thanks for this or what have you, it becomes special, something you can do that 9 out of 10 people can't do or won't do or have no idea how to do it. And it sets you apart and opens so many doors to have your own book or books that you've written and published. And people want to save books before they save magazines.
Yeah, isn't it unique, really, that whole experience? And I enjoyed it very much, and even now, the last one that I wrote, that not the one that's coming out in July, but the one that we have had out, is the one that I'm going to show it to you here, if I can reach it. Oh, okay. It's this one, and this one is ADHD Unlocked. And
got one in our lobby.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. And thanks for that, Peter. And so And now I hear people, they sending me text or emails, or they talk to me, see me someplace, and they say, "I've read your book, and I like, that the way the book is structured and what happens." And then ADHD in particular is still being, a certain stigma was attached to it, and it's coming out more and more and more and more. And it allowed me to, about a month ago, I made a presentation at BCIT for a group of students about that as well. So it kind of brings you to speaking about issues that you raise, and all those opportunities around it. So, and it kind of got me now to the point that I'm hoping to write at least one book a year, for as long as I'm able to, and
Absolutely.
and really enjoy it.
Well, once you've written one through the process, books get easy. The content doesn't necessarily get easy, but the ability to write a book and publish a book and get it out there. But it helps lift up you of what you're trying to do in your community, and in Canada and the other places of the world that you go to. And you're looked at a little differently because you have a book or books in your arsenal.
You're an
So I
author.
encourage everyone to have a book.
Exactly.
You're an author.
You are an author, and that puts you in a whole different area. And then it fits so well, Peter, with, because you are also a professional speaker of international level, which again is stands out, because a lot of times what brings you to those venues, in some cases, is the books that you've written or the exposure that
Yes.
people got to it, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And the one of the I didn't know this at the beginning, but the back of the room book sales is pretty critical. So if you've got an audience of like 300 or 400,
Right,
you probably could sell 150 books or even more
right.
after your keynote address. So you do that 10 times a year, you could be up to 2 or 3 or 4 thousand books just in the back of the room.
Exactly, and very significant, and the combination of all of that, is unique. It gives you the ability to. But I always find interesting is, you're able to stand up in a certain setting, and then because you're an effective and a good communicator, you can address a lot of issues, that are being raised or where people want you to speak to, and I think it's very, very unique. Again, I had the opportunity. Obviously, I was part of the liberation in April the 12th, 1945, and I was 5 years old. And it allows me to, every year I speak at different schools about what it really means, the 2 minutes of silence, and why it is important, and what it meant to those people that went through occupation. Obviously, we see that now in the Ukraine, but even the ones in Europe in the Second World War were very significant, had a great deal of effect on families and on people that were around it. So to me, it's always been important to try to speak to 2, 3, 4 different schools. Like even the week of the 11th, I was in Surrey speaking to 2 schools, and then 2 other schools here in Prince George. And in some settings, there were as many as 2,000 students, to be able to
Wow.
share with them my experience and why I believe we should appreciate what we have so much, and then the other part of how quickly it all could change and what it really means. And, so that to me has been important. But, yeah.
But when you tell your story, and particularly if you're talking to 1,500 or 2,000 kids, they can see themselves in you while they're sitting in that audience, and they say, "Well, if he can do it, why
Exactly.
can't I do it?"
Exactly,
And
Peter.
that's the encourage. That's what you do. You uplift people, saying, "I can do this from humble beginnings,
Exactly.
and you can do it." And you're sitting here in a warm auditorium somewhere in British Columbia or Alberta or Saskatchewan, and you can be in this country just about anything you want to be.
Exactly, Peter. And that's why I believe I have an obligation to speak to those issues and the one about ADHD, because I'm an ADHD person that got this, diagnosed when I was well into my late 50s and never realized that. And I believe it's a superpower. And I feel I have to speak about that, and I have to speak about my experiences, with the Canadian Army liberating us, all those kind of things, for all the reasons that you just gave. The other thing that I just wanted to talk to you about is that you were born in England, correct?
I was born in England, just outside of London,
And
in a little town called Ealing.
Ealing, and you came to Canada, to Vancouver, in fact, and when you were still very young,
Yes, I was 12.
12.
My father came 1 year ahead of me, and once he got settled in New Westminster, and then the reason he settled in New Westminster is because the bus he took wrong in New Westminster, and he had to change buses, and there wasn't another bus leaving for Vancouver till the night. But he
And
never left New Westminster.
and what did he do for a career, Peter?
Uh, he worked in a company in New Westminster called Gilly Brothers,
Okay,
which was in the construction business,
right.
which was perfect for New Westminster and Coquitlam and Burnaby and those growing areas. And he sold all of the cement and the bricks and the doors and the windows and the building maintenance, what have you. So that's how he started. But he did it because the bus that he was on stopped in New Westminster and he had to get off.
Yeah.
And there was no bus leaving for Vancouver till the next day. And he stayed at the YMCA, which was Royal Avenue in New Westminster, and never left.
Oh my goodness, eh? And
But he
then
made a decision, John. He made a
yeah,
decision, not unlike yours, different decision to you, but not unlike your decision. He said, "This is where I'm going to build my life,
right,
in New Westminster.
right,
I am going to serve the city and do the best I can to give all my days of my life to the city of New Westminster."
right.
And there was nothing in this city that he was not asked to do or MC, from the mayor's conferences to what is. They even named the theater after him, the Bernie Legge Theater, all because he wanted to serve just the city of New Westminster. It wasn't about Vancouver or Surrey
No,
or Coquitlam. It was all New Westminster for him. And
right.
he became Mr. New Westminster.
And he was a good communicator.
Yes, great communicator.
Yeah, and that probably was something that inspired you in a way.
I would think so. Yes. The very as we talked to the opening of the broadcast, the very first speaking engagement I had was at Vincent Massey Junior High School
Grade 9.
when I was graduating to go to Lester Pearson High School, which were right next door to each other.
Right.
And I gave literally a 5 or 7 minute speech about something or other about graduating and moving into high school. And I loved it so I thought I could do this for a living. I didn't know that I
Exactly.
could do this for a living.
Yeah.
But that's what hooked me to becoming a public speaker.
Yeah. And then you were, I read someplace, in those days you were a comedian as well, speaking on as a comedian in a way, on the lighter side of speaking.
Yeah, I thought I had a pretty good sense of humor. Thank you for that. And so I put as much humor as I could in my speeches, because
Yeah.
all the people I heard speaking weren't using humor. So that, well, what can I do that's a little
Yeah.
different, and get the audience on my side? And so that's how I introduced humor into my speeches, and I still do that today.
Yeah, and it's very, very important, right? You must preserve a
Yes.
sense of humor, including standing
Yeah.
back. And although we can be very serious, I am, but then still having the ability to stand back and laugh at yourself from time to time is very important.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Now, tell me a little
So
bit more. Yeah, go ahead.
I some Massey Theater. Vincent Massey Junior High School for giving me the first speaking engagement I ever did in Canada, and it went on from there.
So then, okay, then how did your, so there you were in grade 9, then you went to high school. Take it forward a little bit further, because what happened then, at some point in your career, you worked for a newspaper, then you worked for a radio station, CJCOR, and so give me a bit of a feel of, already you had good self-confidence, otherwise you could not speak already in grade 9, but what took you further into the newspapers and then onto the radio station?
Well, there was a course in high school called English 32, which was really a journalism course.
Right.
And I thought, I liked journalism, and I liked that kind of industry, not realizing I'd be into that industry full time. And so the publisher of the then Columbian newspaper, interesting guy by the name of Rick Taylor, spoke at our graduating class, and his comments were so electric. I approached him afterwards and I said, I'd like to work for you. This was in New Westminster at the Columbia newspaper.
How old were you
And
then?
he said, well, when you graduate, come down and see me. Well, that was going to be in 3 or 4 months.
Right.
Well, I left. He thought I was. Well, when I graduated, I went down, knocked on the door of his offices, and I said, "Oh, Mr. Taylor is expecting me."
Yeah.
He had no idea who I was.
Yeah.
You were just one kid in a class of 50 or 60 other kids.
Yeah.
And what do you mean you come in and I'm expecting? I don't even know who you are. I said, but I thought you wanted to hire me. Anyway, he did hire me.
Yeah.
And that's how I got into the communication business in the newspaper business.
Yeah.
And
So
that's really how it started for me.
and then from there on in, you also went into the radio part, CJOR, I believe, in Vancouver.
CJOR, yep.
How did you get so? Because now you went from writing articles,
Yes.
to you became a voice, or what did you do at the radio station?
Well, the job that was available was this person
Right.
at CJR Radio in downtown Vancouver at the old Grosvenor Hotel. It's no longer there. It's a shopping center. And so I did that, and I liked that as well. So I liked doing recordings. But I liked interviewing people. I didn't realize it was going to be a full-time job for me over the years. So that's how I got started. Very humble beginnings.
Right.
Didn't really do it for a lot of money. Maybe I got the dinner or lunch or breakfast that day, but I didn't do it for money.
Gave you experience, right?
I got hooked by it. I wanted to do this for a living. I wanted this to be part of a career path that I didn't even know yet I was going to take. So that's how it started.
How old were you then when you were at the radio?
Gosh. Very early 20s.
Yeah.
Maybe even younger than that. Maybe 18, 19.
So you met your wife after that, and I want to talk about I want to talk about your family a little bit too. You have 2 daughters?
3.
3 daughters, yeah. Yeah.
3 daughters,
So tell me a little bit about your family,
Well, being in the broadcast business in Vancouver,
Right.
working for the Columbia newspaper where I started, and then I went to CJOR.
Right.
I was doing on air and some production and some sales at the same time, because you had to do 2 or 3 things. In those days, it was too big a job for. There wasn't enough money either doing one or the other. You had to do a combination of the.
Yeah.
And then I was also entertaining and emceeing at different events around town. And at I think it was a golf club in Vancouver, and I was doing entertaining. Comedy was my line then. And the gentleman sitting in the front row was the booking agent for P&O Cruise Lines.
Yeah.
And he came up to me and he said, "You're single?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Do you think you'd ever like to travel on a cruise liner?" I said, "Absolutely."
Yeah.
"Where to?" He said, "Well, could go to Australia, could go to the Orient, could go to England." I said, "I don't care. I'm single. I'll go wherever you want."
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
said, "Well, I'll get back to you in a couple of weeks." Well, a couple of weeks later, he said, "Okay, I've got you booked to go from Vancouver on the SS Oriana to London." And it was about 5 or 6 weeks to get there. And I was to do no more than 3 shows a week. Both in those days, it was tourist economy class, first class, and first class. And they said, "You'll be staying in first class and you'll be leading in first class, but you got to make sure you go to the tourist class a couple of days a week, entertain, MC the show, whatever." So that's how I got started.
Yeah.
And on the very first night, I thought to myself, well, I'm not going to eat in tourist class because they're going to obviously have better food in first class. In those days, they had both classes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I went to the first class dining room and loved it. And then I thought, well, I better go to the economy class and mix with the passengers because tomorrow night I've got to entertain those passengers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that first night out, I met this young lady. Her name was Kay Tanner, her name was. And don't ask me what happened, but the last thing I wanted to do was get hooked up with a woman on this cruise on the first night, second night.
Exactly.
But I felt crazy over her, and I wouldn't let her out of my sight. And we got married 6 or 7 months later in England.
Oh my goodness.
And now we've been married over 60 years.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. The last thing I wanted to do, and it was kind of love at first sight, and I thought, I'm not letting her out of my sight.
And was she from Vancouver? Where did she live?
She was living in Seattle with her mom and dad,
Okay.
but she was English. She was going back to England.
Okay.
Her fiance, and I found that out in the first couple of dates, and I thought, no, you're not marrying him. You're going to marry me.
Amazing. And how many years ago is it now? 60 that you've been married?
60 years ago, over 60 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, unbelievable. And your 3 daughters, tell us a little bit about your daughters because also let me say one thing first. You then got involved in the Canadian media, right, company.
Yes.
And which is
it was called All Canada Radio and TV.
right. And that turned out to become one of the largest media companies in Canada, really, right? Canada-wide.
Yes. Yeah. And I was managing the radio division, while another chap by the name of Artie Nelson was managing the television division in Vancouver for Western Canada.
Right. And that kind of started growing into something much different and it involved also buying some existing papers already or documents already that one of them was owned by Jimmy Pattison, in fact.
It was. I can't remember the name of it, but when he wanted to sell something, I thought, well, if he wants to get rid of it, it must be pretty good. I'll buy it anyway. I really didn't know what I was buying.
No.
But it was in the broadcast business.
And so then from there on in, your career became you became an entrepreneur. You already were quite an entrepreneur in different ways, right? But then it took more structure in terms of having this media company in the different areas, right?
Yeah. Well, and going to England, it is far more structured in England.
Yeah.
You're either a comedian or you're a producer or you're whatever. But I was a performer.
Right.
And so I hooked up with a whole bunch of agencies. And in those days, there was nightclubs all over England.
Right.
And so I would do like 6 weeks in a row, different nightclub every week for 6 weeks, come back to London, do some things in London. And then I'd do some nightclubs for the south of Wales for like 4 or 5 weeks, then come back to London and then go up north. And so that's how I got started in England as an entertainer.
Right. And then back to Vancouver,
Yes.
starting your media company. So how did all of that come off the ground and took on different structure? And
Well, you might not remember a man named Al Davidson. They called him Big Al Davidson. He was the sports director for CKNW,
okay.
and he was a fantastic broadcaster. But he kind of fancied himself that he would be a producer of magazines, and so he started this magazine called Al Davidson's This Week.
Okay.
And he gave it away at the Safeway stores in Greater Vancouver and Vancouver Island. And he discovered I'm a much better broadcaster than I ever was as a publisher.
Right.
And so we had lunch at the old Caribou Pub shopping center many, many years ago. And he told me this story, and he said, I think you should buy this company. And I said, how much? He said, I want $1 for it. I just want to get out of it. So I bought Al Davidson's This Week magazine from Al, and 2 weeks later, it was published every week, but it was 2 weeks ahead of time. And he said, "You'll be the owner. You'll be the owner right away, but your first publication will be in 2 weeks." And he said, "Rename the magazine." So I renamed the magazine TV Week Magazine.
Right.
So that's how Al Davidson's magazine took shape with TV Week that I bought from him. And that's got to be, 50 years ago, something of that nature, a long time ago.
And
It's still our number one magazine today.
yeah, it still is, and
Yeah.
and extremely popular, right? In mainly in Western Canada, Peter.
Pardon me?
Mainly in Western Canada, or where is it sold?
Yes, Western Canada. Yes.
Yeah.
Exclusively Western Canada.
Yeah, and then your daughters are working also in the company now.
Well, Samantha is the president of Canada Wide Media, which is the parent company.
Right.
Rebecca is my middle daughter. She worked for us for a couple of years in sales.
Right.
And my youngest daughter, Amanda, didn't want anything to do with the business. And so she became a school teacher.
Oh my goodness.
And so she's been a school teacher for many, many, many years, and she loves it.
Yeah.
Actually, she's been at one school for her entire career of about 40 years.
Amazing. Yeah.
Doesn't want to be principal, wants to teach those kids.
Yeah. Yeah. And what a career as well. My youngest daughter is also a school teacher in Surrey, actually. And I'm very, very proud of them, both my daughters, actually. I'm very proud of them, as you are about your daughters. So if you kind of look forward now and looking at all the opportunities that you've seen and all the people you're very, very well known by a lot of people, and unfortunately, somebody that, that you knew very well and you wrote a book, or more than one book about it, was Joe Siegel.
Yes.
And he unfortunately passed away, I believe, in the last year.
Yes.
But he had an amazing reputation, an amazing history. I had the opportunity to talk to him on the phone once because of the COVID-19. We couldn't meet in person, but had an amazing story of his experience, and he was in Holland actually and liberated as part of Holland when he was only 17 or 18 years old, and we determined that he came through my hometown really in northeastern Holland towards the end of the war, and but you wrote a book about him having lunch with Joe, and that talked about different people for many, many years. He had a table set up in was it the Hyatt downtown?
The Four Seasons.
Oh, Four Seasons, where
Yeah.
he met with all the different individuals from all kinds of corners of life for lunch.
He had his own table for many, many years at the Four Seasons, and to get an audience with Joe was a real treat. Let me tell you.
Right.
And I never sold him a penny,
No.
but we hit it off, and I almost came part of his family with his wife Rosalie, and he got two boys, Lorne and Gary, and two daughters, and we spent a lot of time together. I never sold him anything. He never bought anything from me, but he gave me millions of dollars worth of advice and encouragement, and it took me to places that I would never have gone to meet people, and so I was very indebted to him. Not that I was ever his son, but I was as close as one could have been. He included me in just about everything that he did, and I loved him. He gave me all kinds of advice, and we became very, very good friends.
And he was an entrepreneur extraordinaire, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Started with nothing.
Started with nothing.
Yeah, and built to, especially in real estate.
As a matter of fact, he got started, believe it or not, in your country. He served in the Canadian forces
Yeah.
in Holland.
Yes, he did.
And he stayed a little while after the war, and he ended up buying a lot of army surplus that he had shipped from Holland to Vancouver. And when it got to Vancouver, they said, okay, you've bought all this stuff. What are you going to do with it? He said, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
And so he rented a truck, and he started in Ladner, and he went to farms. It was paint. He bought paint, by the way. He went to farms all across Ladner, all the way up to Chilliwack on that side of the river, and down through the Fraser Valley, and sold his paint. And that's how we got started.
He was only a young man then. He was barely 20
Yeah.
then.
Yeah.
You know, so, and already so entrepreneurial, and amazing, that what an individual and what an opportunity, right?
Yeah, he was something else, and if and I was fortunate enough to be really quite close to him, and it was so beneficial because the lunches I'd go with him, and then he'd want to take Kay and I, and he and Rosalie, we'd go to a dinner that he'd had a table at, and we became the best of friends. And he never spent any money with me whatsoever. No, not a penny.
No.
But the advice was worth absolutely millions. The association and the advice that he gave me was so invaluable.
Another good friend or somebody you know very, very well is Jimmy Patterson.
Yes.
Another amazing, amazing individual. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Jimmy is so unique. Whatever Jimmy says he's going to do, at the time he's going to do it, he does it.
Right.
Not a minute before or not a minute later. If it's
Yeah.
at 2:00 he's going to meet you, he'll walk through that door at 2:00.
Yeah.
If he's going to phone you at 2:00, if he's
He'll
going
phone
to
you.
take you to lunch at 2:00, or whatever it is,
Yeah.
everything is on time.
Yeah.
He is a man of his word. Whatever he says he's going to do, he does. Whatever he said he's going to do for you or with you or follow up with you, he does it. If he says he's going to be there, he's there.
Yeah.
And he models that everywhere he goes.
Yeah, and he developed that reputation as well, right? And has been making major commitments to, the hospitals in particular in Vancouver or in British Columbia, has given back a lot, has done extremely well financially, and obviously controls something 24 different divisions in hundreds of different companies, has been extremely successful.
Yeah, and Maureen Chant has been with him from day one,
Yeah.
and she's still with him. In fact, we had them at a function just a few months ago, and I said to Maureen, I said, I'd love if you could come too. And she said, well, yes, I will. She's in a wheelchair. And so
Yeah.
she had her daughter. She still works for Jimmy every day. She's
I
in there
know
every
she
morning.
does. Yeah, amazing.
And she wheeled her mother over there.
Yeah,
And Jimmy came shortly afterwards, and they stayed for the whole event.
yeah.
They didn't feel rushed, didn't feel like they had to go. He made a commitment, and when he makes a commitment, he just does it.
Now, Peter, looking forward, for young entrepreneurs that are watching us, and the successes that we have had, and the challenges and the hard work that went along with it, as you asked me earlier about, the 2547, that's what I had in my pocket when I came here in July of 1965, but I had a dream, and the dream is to build a lumber mill, and start from nothing. Couldn't speak the language, didn't have a job, or didn't know a soul, but I had $25.47. That if I look back in all the presentations that I make, I talk about attitude is critical. Belief in having a positive attitude. As you do likely, I usually get up at 5:30 in the morning. What I do every morning when I get up, I make my bed. And then before I leave, I turn around and to just make sure the bed is right. Maybe it's my Army background or Air Force background, but I do that. And then the reason that I do that, because that's the one thing that I've done the right thing. And then I put in a good day, even now a lot of times, 10 to 12 hours a day. And when I come back home, again, I have my bed and it's nicely made, and it makes me feel good. And then passion is that I love the lumber industry as you do, with all the things that you are doing, and that Joe Siegel was doing, and that Jimmy Patterson is doing as I know him and I see him. I love what I'm doing. That makes it so much easier. I enjoy going to work every day.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then the other one is work ethic, is that if I'm going to do it and put the effort into doing it, do it well. Do it well. And I've always remembered, from when I was a young boy still, and I worked in a plant that my dad was managing. He had this older fella, easy for me to say now, he probably was younger than I am now, but in any event, that's how I kind of felt about it, is that he was a planer man that planed the lumber, and he had the machine, and he was older already, so I had to pick him up from his house, bring him to the mill, and in the evening, when he was ready to go back, I had to drive him back. And I always remember I would go there, and he didn't say much. And, then I would stand by the door as he was ready to leave, I was hoping. And then before he left, he always closed the door, he always stood there, and he turned around, and he looked back, looking at the equipment. And he stood there probably for 2, 3, 4, to me it took forever. Why is he doing that? Well, the reason that he did, he just wanted to make sure it was all done correctly. And then he turned around, didn't say nothing, stepped in the car, and then I brought him home, and he didn't say much either then, but that's kind of what I always kind of remember. It's about, he loved the job, he gave it all that he got, and he was proud of what he did. And those qualities are extremely important. And what I see a lot of times in people that are entrepreneurial, and I'm not talking about making a lot of money, but just loving the job of whatever they do it well and give it everything that they have, is so immensely rewarding, I believe.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, John. If you give 100%, or even more than 100%, just about to everything you do as often as you can, it's amazing over the long haul that people will respect you for that, and they'll want to do business with you, and they'll want to learn from you. And you're not lording it over them. You're doing what you want to do, and
Yeah.
you do the best job you can at it. Not that you love every single thing that you do,
No.
but once you've committed to do it, you'll do it to the very best of your ability. I think that's key.
And then the other part about it, Peter, that both you and me have, you acquired that a long time ago before me, but becoming good speakers and being able to effectively communicate is so important. And then to have the gift of being able to become an author, and you inspired me in a lot of ways in that direction, is extremely rewarding as well. And and then obviously all of that combined, and you being born in England, although you came here when you were very young, and I was born in Holland during the Second World War, and then coming here to Canada and BC in particular when I was 24, and starting from the ground up more or less. I don't think there is any place in the world that I can think of that would be more rewarding and offer more opportunity than Canada, and in particular British Columbia.
Yeah, I agree. Uh, it is very easy to fall in love with this country and to explore all the opportunities that are available to you if you wish to take them. And you've done that, and you've done so well, certainly in the Prince George area, and all the other things that you've tackled. And I'd like to think that that's been good for me as well. I haven't loved everything that I've done, but nevertheless, I've done it to the very best of my ability. And then if I haven't liked it, I've moved on to something else. So I don't know of another country that would give you the opportunity, or me the opportunity, or people like us the opportunity to express their gifts and their talents, and to grow their gifts and their talents so that they could give back to the community, or give back to the country, or give back to the province as much as they've taken out.
And I agree with you. And some people say, well, the opportunities are not there now like they used to be. I said, not so. They are still there today as much as they were in the past, if not more. And then the other part about it is I fly a lot, and as you likely do as well. And if I sit in an airplane, I always sit by the window. And especially when I'm flying in Canada and over BC, and I look out of the window and I say, it's paradise. I just cannot get enough of it. It is such amazing how fortunate we are, how lucky we are.
Yeah, agreed. They call it the land of opportunity, and that's what it is.
Exactly that, Peter. Anything else that comes to mind as we get to the end of our podcast that you would like to mention or talk about?
Well, Chari and I were talking about it today. Is Mother Time just keeps ticking along,
Right.
and so there's more behind us than there is ahead of us.
Right.
And that's just the reality of life, and that's the reality of the existence that we live. So make the most of every single day you possibly can. Serve as many people as you can. Give back to the community. If it's money, if it's time, if it's effort, if it's energy, do the very best you can, as often as you can, for as long as you can. because it will come to an end. And you want to be recognized as you are in this province, but certainly in the Prince George area, for someone who's done that, who's built from nothing. In fact, I think the first day you worked on I think you told me many years ago, you worked on the logging mill in your suit and a tie because that's all you had. That's all
Exactly.
you had. And you wore
Exactly.
that as you got off the boat.
Yeah. And I was piling lumber and the night shift at a sawmill in Quesnel, and I had my tie on, my white shirt, my black jacket, my gray pants, and I said and there was a plywood plant there as well. There must have been 100 people working, and every single one of them came to look at the sawmill. I say, look at this crazy guy. And I say, and then people sometimes are mean. They try to bury you in the lumber, but I had a whole different program. Nobody was going to bury me in the lumber, so I took my tie off at the first coffee break, and I was determined that I was going to build my mill, and so yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's the land of opportunity,
and it still is.
and it still is.
It's a little different today than it was when you and I first started here many years ago, but it still is. The opportunities to do your very best, to be honest and straightforward, and to do everything you promise that you will do.
Yeah, and I
And
agree
if
with
more people did that,
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, Peter. And that's, as I said, and as you said, that someday, and if I kind of reflect forward and saying someday I know it will be the end, and then for me, what would be satisfying if I can look back and say, I did a good job, I did the best I could, and I'm proud of what we did. And that to me would be, I would say that would be rewarding, and I would appreciate all the things that have happened and that we have done.
yeah, well, you've done all those things and more, my friend.
Peter,
You've
it was a pleasure
thank you.
to have you on my podcast, and again, thank you very much, and my friend, and hopefully soon we'll meet in person again in Vancouver and go for lunch,
At Dario's.
at Dario's. I love it. Yeah. Thanks, Peter. Thanks for the podcast.
Thank you, John.
Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.